to figure out how to start on all of this. Most of you know about my work and what I do, but I do want to give a little bit of explanation on this part that I keep referring to they, so most of those who don't know will understand what I'm talking about. But I've been doing the hypnosis for 40 years, and I've been doing the past life sessions and regressions for 30 years. So I do the therapy and the counseling. People come from the world, that little town in Huntsville, to have a session. So it just keeps growing and growing. But during that 30 years, I developed my own technique that is not like any other hypnosis technique out there. And that's what I'm teaching now all over the world, because it is very dynamic and powerful. But what I learned when I was putting this together and it evolved, I found out how to contact this part that is so powerful. And that's the one that I get the information from. Now, most hypnotists do past life regressions. That's all they do. It just go through a past life, and that's it. And a lot of times the client, when they leave, they'll say, well, it was interesting. Ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, but what does it have to do with my life now? A lot of hypnotists don't know how to tie it together and how to take it further. So when I do my work, the past life regression is the tip of the iceberg. That's just the very beginning, because there's so much more you can find out. So I found a way to contact what I call the subconscious. But it's not the subconscious the way the psychiatrists define it. And I've had arguments with psychiatrists that have taken my class about this because they don't agree with me. But the subconscious, the way the psychiatrists defined it, that to me is a childish part of the mind. And you can use it for habits, stop smoking, lose weight, but it does not have the knowledge of this part that I found. The part I work with that I call the subconscious, you may want to define it as the oversoul, the higher self, the higher consciousness. But it is so big and so huge that it has the answers to everything. Why not work with that part? Because it is so powerful. I call it the subconscious. They said they don't care. They said, we'll work with you no matter what you call us. But I call it that part. Some of my students said they've begun calling it the higher self, which doesn't make any difference. It works. But that's the one that I call in when I'm doing the instantaneous healings. And also it solves the person's problems. But the interesting thing that has happened with this, and I call it them because they refer to themselves as a group, but it is a very powerful group. But it's amazing that it is so huge, but it cares very much about each individual person. And that's why when I do the session, it has so much love for the person I'm working with that is, it's beyond description. But it's hard to explain because it's beyond our way of defining things. So when I'm contacting this part, one time I asked them, well, who are you? Because they referred to themselves as a group. And they said, we are the collective. And I said, that sounds like the Borg on Star Trek. But it is such a powerful group that the amazing thing about it is it comes through everybody I work with. All over the world, it doesn't make any difference. It's always the same. It's always the same definitions. It always uses the same terminology, the way it speaks. It's always the same, I want to say entity. It's too bigger than that. But I think people have taken my class and said if they've had it happen, they'll say, yeah, I contacted the subconscious, and I have to say with a capital S, because it is so powerful when it comes through. But how can you explain it? It comes through everybody I work with, and nobody knows what I'm looking for. They come to me with problems, and I'm helping them with that. But it's always the same voice, the same definitions, the same terminology. Doesn't make any difference where I speak to them anywhere in the world. And as part of this, this is how I get my information that I write about. A lot of times it is the entire session they will turn into the part I need. But a lot of times toward the end of the session, and I can be in England having a session, toward the end of the session, this voice will come through. They never interrupt the therapy, but toward the end it'll come through and say, Dolores, this is the next piece of information you need for your next book. And they'll start giving me a theory that I haven't even heard of before. And I'll say, okay. And then a couple of weeks later, I'll be back in the States doing somebody else. It'll happen again. And they give me more information about the theory they've just given me. So it's like a continuing thing. And some of these people will go home and they'll email me or call me and they'll say, what was that voice at the end of the tape? Because it definitely wasn't them. So I call them they because they have become so powerful in my life. And it's not channeling because this is something much bigger than that. Because it's not coming through one person, it's coming through many, many people. So that's what my books, especially the new ones now, the Convoluted Universe series, are coming from the fact that accumulation of the material that they keep giving me. And every time I think I've got it all, there's nothing more they can possibly tell me, something new comes out through somebody else and I'm off on another theory. That's how the Convoluted Universe material came about, because when I was doing the custodians, that was my 20 years of working with the UFOs and the abduction cases. And the voices began to come through then, but those were the ETs were giving me information about their planets, about how their ships operated, and why they were coming. This is one of the reasons that I did want to print Don's books, because he was validating all the things that I've written about that I found this way. And to me, that shows there's something to it if it's coming from other directions, the same material. Because they gave me the same story of the seeding of the planet Earth, how life began, how they've been taking care of us since the beginning of time. But it began to go in different directions, away from UFOs and abductions, and began to get into complicated metaphysics. That's when I started writing the Convoluted Universe series. But what I'm getting now, I could never have understood 30 years ago when I started out. I've been evolving and growing the whole time. I've written 15 books now, and some people say they want to read the books in the order I wrote them so they can see how I evolved and how I changed as I went along. Because I began in the very beginning, 30 years ago, with just reincarnation. I thought I had all the answers, I figured I knew it all. I knew how reincarnation works. I was thinking of it in the linear fashion, and I thought I had it all figured out. But then they began coming up with these other theories. And I was saying, wait a minute. The first one was the imprinting theory. I'm not going to go into a lot of this because I've talked for days on these things, and you can see why. But everybody came up with a theory that I'd never heard of, and it disrupted my belief system. Like, wait a minute, guys, I've got this all figured out. Now you're throwing something else in here that doesn't go according with what I believe and what I thought I've learned. And it really bothered me. But then I got to thinking, if I wasn't open to new ideas and asking questions and learning something else, then I was no better than the church that said, believe this, don't ask for anything else, don't try to question. So I began looking at these new ideas they were presenting to me and trying to figure them out. And it began to make sense. So after that, then I get another little piece. They never overwhelm you. Even my clients, they won't overwhelm you. It's like all these years they've been giving me little spoonfuls of information. Here's another piece. Digest this, then we'll give you a little piece more. And I think that's a wise thing to do. Otherwise, I would have been overwhelmed. I would have thrown it all away, and I'd say, no, I don't understand it. I'm not going to work with it. And that's what would have happened. I had a client who came to me. Everyone who comes to see me Their main question is they want to know what's their purpose. They want to know what they're here for, what they're supposed to be doing with their life. That's the main question. The subconscious, you know who I'm talking about, they said they can tell you if it's appropriate. Because suppose somebody knew their purpose before it was time, you weren't ready to hear it. If you were told too soon, well then the person would say, oh, that's the last thing I'd ever want to do. I'm not going to do that. And you put blocks in your way and you would sabotage it. So they know. So I had this man, one of the questions he wanted to know was what was his purpose? Why was he here? They said, we can't tell you, it's not time. But they said, oh, we wish we could because you don't know what we see. But they said, consider he is where you were 20 years ago. You don't give a baby a 3-course meal. You start a baby out on milk, cereal, crushed vegetables. You don't give them a steak. So that's the same idea. You have to evolve at the stage your mind is. And so after that, I began to understand I could not have handled the steak that I'm getting now 30 years ago. I would have blown my mind. I would have just said, nope, it's too complicated. I don't want anything to do with it. So over the years, they have been giving me more and more complicated information. And as soon as I understand it, digest it, then they come up with another one. And it's been that way now, especially as I go through the Convoluted Universe series. And those of you who have read the last one, I just finally got it out in February. I thought the book was finished when I got to the part about the final solution. But my daughter was saying, no, we don't want to end it on a negative note. So I went to Montreal a month later. They came through blasting at me. This is the way it should end. This is a new theory, a totally new theory. And here I thought I'd had all the theories they could come up with. And they began telling me something that I'd never heard of before. And I said, I don't understand it. They said, all right, then we stop right here till you digest it and understand it. But just be aware there is more. So I end the book with that. There is more. So there will be more books because there's still more information that I can't understand. They think it's time now that people begin to broaden their minds, begin to think, begin to come up with ideas we've never even thought of before. They said we will never have all of the information. It's impossible. They told me one time, all of your questions will never be answered because some information is as poison versus medicine. It's not our brains, it's our minds. Our minds don't have the concepts to understand the totality of it all. So even when they're telling me things, they'll say, well, this is the best we can explain it in your language, with your words and your vocabulary. But it's just a very tiny part of what the whole picture and the concept is.